Excellent. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sikivu Hutchinson, the author of Roll Heretics, The Life and Times of Rory Tharpe, and we are live streaming from LA as well as from Michigan. And this afternoon, we have as our guest, Kenya Nelson, who's the author of a wonderful novel that we're going to be digging into in a second. But my co-host is Zorrie Petrus, also from Gardena/LA. She is a multi-instrumentalist. What are some of the instruments that you throw down on, Zorrie?
Yeah, so I play the viola, drums, guitar, and piano.
And you are an alum of the Women's Leadership Project, as well as a 2019 graduate of Gardena High School. And where are you currently going to college?
I'm currently at El Camino College and planning on transferring to UCLA and eventually NYU.
And I might add, even though Zorrie is extremely modest, Zorrie is a dynamic photographer, videographer, as well as just an all-round activist and visionary. So really proud to be hosting this afternoon with Zorrie. And Kenya, you have published your debut novel. It's called Ungrateful, just dropped a few months ago.
Actually, it dropped in January.
Okay. So at the beginning of the year.
But things just kind of like slow down and plateau, plus the pandemic, so.
Right, right. So very exciting. Your first novel, and let's dig into your amazing bio. You've been writing since childhood. At 10, it says, Kenya wrote and illustrated a series of children's books that she sold at the Detroit Art Festival. Then she went on to complete her first unpublished novel at 15. She has received numerous writing awards throughout her youth, including, wow, the NAACP AXO Award for Playwriting at 16. In 2008, she received a BA in English from Michigan State University. Initially, she had dreams of being an author and was offered admission to both the University of Tampa and Queen's University of Charlotte for their low residency MFA creative writing programs. However, she decided to pursue a master's in teaching English as a second language at Hamline University. Writing is escapism for Kenya, although her heart is devoted to fine arts. She prides herself on being a, quote, alternative Black girl. Very interesting. I think that resonates with both Zorrie and I, who wants to contribute more unique representations of BIPOC and LGBTQ plus people of color to arts and literature. When she isn't writing or creating art, Kenya enjoys traveling, fashion, photography, and stargazing. She stays grounded with meditation, yoga, and appreciating nature. Cool. So let's just dive right into it. Ungrateful, okay, just dropped in January. It features a very headstrong and self-determining African descent protagonist named Alima. What inspired you to write this novel?
I wanted to see something that wasn't in the mainstream, that wasn't in the media. I wanted to see a character, first and foremost. I wanted to see a character that I didn't see. And then I wanted to see a story associated with her that I didn't see, because I've always been so passionate about it. If I wasn't drawing these characters, I was writing them. And I just kind of just figure, if rather than just me just saying, oh, why don't director A create this and why don't writer B do that, I figure I have those skills, I might as well just go ahead and create something that is not there. And that's what I do. That's the same dogma that my brother also does. He's a filmmaker, and we're just all about, if there's something that we want to see more of with Black people and people of color, mainly Black people, then just make it. Just make it. Even if you don't have the talent, find some people that can make it and create it, rather than waiting for someone else to do it. Because 9 times out of 10, if we wait for the mainstream to do it, they're going to water it down anyway. They're not going to tell the true story. And so it's a great way, when you take charge and create it on your own, it's a great way to provide a counter story to the stories that are being told from a Eurocentric perspective, well, a Eurocentric male perspective. You want to be frank. So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and you just mentioned writing about Black people making it, you know, whatever it is. I think that's important too. So also for young Black people to see like, oh, I can make it, whether it's with, you know, music, photography, filmmaking, sports, or being an author, whatever it is. I think that's great to show that, you know, we can do anything anyone else can do. And like you said, if it's told from a different perspective, it can get watered down and not told from our perspective. So that's important to keep in mind for youth. And that's a good way to segue to our next question, which is how do the themes in the novel relate to contemporary issues women of color in the music industry are dealing with?
I'm sorry. So the question is why or how is it?
Yeah, how do the themes of your novel relate to issues women of
Oh,
color are going through in the industry today?
well, I love music and I love um, rock music. Rock music is one of my favorite genres next to jazz and soul, but I wanted to do something different. Well, looking at being a lover of music and just looking at what's going on in the industry, it's like you want to see great talent right now. Even if you're so against the mainstream, you still want to see some appreciation. It's okay to have some validation, but it just seems like if you want some kind of validation and success as a woman of color, you have to be exploited in some way. I have friends who have worked in the entertainment industry, who've been in the entertainment industry, and they all said Black women are expected to be exploited. Like they don't have the option to kind of go a little different. They have to be exploited in some way. And then also just from my personal experiences as an artist, when I'm doing my illustration, when I did the illustration, I did some work for people in the music industry. And I'm not gonna lie, I've also, you know, met people, we might have clicked, okay, let's date. One of them turned out to be that stereotypical predator that we're talking that is being discussed right now in the industry. And from my trauma with dealing with that, it just, and then when you outside of your trauma, you're still seeing people putting these predators on a pedestal. My passion with my love of music, but also my passion with my anger against how people idolize human beings, it just all just came together in that story because it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Like it's just in 2021, Black women, we still, and just women of all races, it's rape, sexual assault. It's just still not seen as serious as it really is.
Right.
And now we got another monster, which I mentioned in my book, is pedophilia, and the agenda of pushing pedophilia. That's another monster now that they're trying to smooth over and trying to make it look like, oh, this is not really what you think it is, but it. So it's a lot of heavy stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, that this book was emotionally and mentally taxing to write, but it was cathartic. And I'm glad that I'm writing. I'm glad that I wrote it.
Exactly. And I just want to commend you for bringing it forward in an unapologetic way, because I mean, certainly it's an
Thank you.
epidemic in African-American communities. This is something that we have been fighting and challenging in the Women's Leadership Project with Black girls and young Black women in the South LA community. And we continue to see this normalization of complicity, normalization of silence, normalization of victim shaming, and normalization of Black girls internalizing that this is okay. that this is a validated behavior, that patriarchy and heteronormativity and heterosexism continues to perpetuate as being something that they should just accept and shut up about. So what I liked about Ungrateful, and I want to be perfectly candid that I'm still getting through the novel, I'm about halfway through.
Oh yeah, that's fine, yeah.
I like the fact that Alima, again, is very autonomous. She's questioning, she's skeptical, she's self-determining. I'm at the point in the novel where she's really being reeled in by all the trappings of fame and celebrity and idolatry. And she's on the precipice of getting in the clutches of Elliot. Elliot is her Svengali and boyfriend, enabler, predator. He's the executive of the record label that she's been signed to, and he's her de facto manager. So why don't you tease out that relationship a little bit? Talk about what compelled you about incorporating that dynamic into this novel as a platform for really underscoring how insidious sexual violence, sexual abuse, and predation is in African American and African descent communities.
Oh, Elliot. Oh, Elliot. I'm not going to name names.
He's a very seductive figure.
I'm not going to name names, but first of all, the creation of him was taken from well-known figures, well-known Black African-American figures, famous people in the industry that I'm not going to say, but I think people will draw those conclusions when they read the book. But in my real life, he's also created from the psychological makeup of people, especially men in the entertainment industry. And one of the things that stood out to me from the men that I've known or talked to or worked with is that the things that are considered deviant in our society is not thought as in the entertainment industry. So pedophilia, if he's 35 and he goes after a 14-year-old girl, that in the entertainment industry, it's like, hey, whereas here, they're going to catch a case. But even in the real world, that's swept under the rug. But in the entertainment industry, it's encouraged. And this one person that I knew, that's what he was doing to the young girls in my city. And I don't know where he is. Hopefully the police is after him. But Elliot, I wanted to just make him into that music hip hop mogul that the Black community, especially our generation, has made into a hero. Can't say nothing negative about them. If you do say something negative, oh, you're a hater, oh, you're putting down a Black man. We see that right now with Bill Cosby, but that's another topic, but it's relevant to what I'm writing in this book, and that is African Americans. First of all, people of all races, we all have our heroes. We all have the idols that we create in our community. But with Black people and with entertainment and sports, I think that comes from the fact that, and I don't know, you guys can agree or disagree with me, but I think it comes from the fact that over history, the Black people were only encouraged to be entertainers or athletes to reach fame and to reach success and to have money. So while you have the Asian people who have, people in science and mathematics and other things where they can use their mind, and white people, they have inventors, engineering, technology. Black people, it seems like the only thing they have is sports, mainly basketball, baseball, and entertainment, or just using, their looks in some way to be seductive, a model or whatnot. And
so in terms of mainstream misconceptions.
Mainstream misconceptions. So therefore, if that's the only heroes that the Black community have, they're going to hold on to them tight because there's not many of them. We don't have a Black Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates We have Oprah, but then she's a woman, and there's so much misogyny towards her that, and I mean, not to agree or disagree with things she might have done, but it's just, she's a woman. So if she was a man, I think she would have been given more passes if she were a man. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm like going off a tangent or anything, but the thing is, I just feel like Elliot represents that toxic person that Black America, that the Black community, we have too many people like that that's being held on a pedestal. Whereas, if you have, Black scientists or astrologers, they're not being pushed enough in the mainstream. So this is also like an attack on the mainstream. I grew up in the 90s and the 80s and the 90s, and sometimes we saw a balance, but now it just seemed like there's barely a balance. And so I'm not trying to demonize successful, people in the entertainment industry. I'm just trying to demonize those heroes that have a toxic record, very demonic, but they're still being pushed and made as the pinnacle of Black success. So, yeah, so that's where like Elliot, just his character was formed from, and dark triad personality type. That's enough.
There's definitely a lot of figures in the Black community that are singers, rappers, actors. Like you mentioned, just the entertainment industry, whether it's sports or the music or film industry, there's a lot of predators that are celebrated, and if they do something, it goes, no one acknowledges it. It doesn't get acknowledged as much as it should get. It pretty much gets swept under the rug, and people downplay the fact that they were talking to a minor, or they were beating on their wife or something in that nature, versus if you have a Black woman in the industry and she's actually trying to do something good and she stays away from being over sexualized, she gets talked about for standing up for being different and going against the stereotypical norm that mainstream media has created for Black women and other women of color. So I definitely see that perspective of the character Elliot being put on a higher pedestal and people pretty much praising that figure, which is crazy. So, and you mentioned like Oprah, she's extremely successful, but she still gets a lot of backlash for things, even though she helps out the Black community specifically, but everyone. She's one of those people that creates jobs for every single person on her network and things in that nature, but people still they find a reason because she's a Black woman, So
yeah,
always look for a reason when it's a Black woman, but when it's a man, it's like, oh, he can't do anything wrong. He's, he was having a bad day, or he was going through something hard in his life, or
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly if we look at the book in terms of Alima's early trajectory in transitioning to being a rock icon and a rock figure, that she's grappling with all of these stereotypes and stigmas associated with Black women being in that niche and being in that industry, that she's trying to bust out of the straitjacket of being only considered to be an R&B figure and only considered to be an eye candy-esque type singer, as opposed to an accomplished instrumentalist musician. And she gets into this situation with record industry execs who are only going to tentatively co-sign her transitioning into rock. They're touting, well, this is an industry that Black women are not really known for excelling in. This is a niche that has been dominated by white virtuosos, white men, electric guitarists, that it's been hijacked by that Eurocentric dynamic. And so she's disrupting a lot of paradigms and a lot of stereotypes and a lot of barriers when she makes this transition. And it's a volatile transition because she is entering into this codependent relationship with this much older predator. So talk about why you were interested in focusing on rock music and having this teenager who, again, is an accomplished musician, electric guitarist, who's shredding all over the place. I really love the way that you incorporated that into the narrative and all the battles that she's confronting with these players in her life who believe that she can't achieve in this different niche.
Well, I love rock music, and I really love like a lot of like the classic hard rock. And as far as like subgenres of rock, I like industrial rock, grunge, and I chose rock because it and it's so funny that I'm mentioning this because I'm reading this book by Elena Dawes. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. And she wrote the book, What Are You Doing Here? And she mentioned about how like metal music embodied that anger and pain. And that is a perfect outlet, a productive outlet for young Black people. And since Black women were experiencing so much pain and anger, we were still R&B and other genres such as soul and Black women could sing about their pain, but it was still kind of like controlled. They had to still be feminine while doing it. They had to still kind of be so she said that metal, I'm just paraphrasing, but metal allowed them to just let it out, purge with emphasis also on the skills and the musical skills that are associated with it. Rather than just be the singer or the crooner, you can do that, and you can incorporate your instruments, your lyrics. You can just Black women who want to purge. I'm just gathering from what she said is that they have more autonomy to purge in rock music. And with Alima, I don't know, but her sister Desta, her older sister, is a metalhead. And her older sister, although she can sing and write, she's kind of like, I don't care about singing music. My sisters are into that. And she was that role model for Alima because she had went through, they all were molested by, they all, like, as you read, but her older sister went through a lot. And to be in that household where your father is forcing these girls to have, you have to be this way and act this way and present yourself that way. And then her mother, she's rebellious in her way. And they're seeing that it's kind of like, well, rock music, these girls, that's a perfect outlet. You got the sisters and metalhead. And then I just want to see that. I just want to see a Black female rock artist doing industrial rock, doing that grungy rock with the dissonance guitar, with the fuzzy guitar. I wanted to see that instead of seeing what the mainstream media would choose. I mean, no shade to some of the Black women who've had some success. Like, for example, Fifi Dobson. Fifi Dobson, I don't know if you guys heard of Fifi Dobson. She's a Canadian pop punk, like pop rock artist, and she was big like in the 2003s. And then she kind of went away for a while. It was just a lot of issues, industry issues, racism, sexism. But now she's coming back and she's releasing music this year. And her experience and then just the dynamics of the industry, how they dealt with her, was also one of the influences of me creating Lima in a story. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to give people what Fifi Dobson could have given people, but she wasn't allowed to because the industry told her to do this and be this and look this way and look that way. So, and her and Rez, and you can go further back than that. further back all the way to Sister Rosetta Tharpe. I want to, give people that rather than the type of rock that the mainstream media think that Black women should do. So I just wanted to give a counter story and create that.
Yeah, and certainly that's something that we have been on countless times with WLP,
Yeah.
with the Black Women in Rock Roundtable, and trying to bring in not only veteran baby boomers and Gen X musicians, but Gen Z musicians and instrumentalists and visionaries like Zorrie. So Zorrie and other young Black women have talked about the hurdles that they have had to jump over in terms of being perceived as quote unquote capable musicians,
Yeah.
different genres beyond R&B and hip hop.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. My sister and I started out in classical music, and the mainstream media, you don't really see Black women in classical music or in rock music. So thankfully I was a part of a few orchestras that were diverse. So I felt comfortable performing there. But yeah, I'm so glad you incorporated rock into the novel, because there's so many misconceptions of what genres Black women, girls and women should stay in only, R&B, soul, gospel, hip hop. And then like when we're in hip hop and R&B, we always had to be laying down in a video or sexualized in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Just laying down, even if it's a bird's eye view, it's still made to make Black women look sexualized in some manner, even if it's subtle. So it's those tiny cases where it's actually a big deal to us, because other people are seeing that, and if they're not interacting with Black people all the time, they're going to think that that's how we are 100% of the time, what they're seeing in the media, versus actually talking to us and getting to know what we like, because who says you have to stay in certain genres? You could branch out, because I'm not gonna lie, my music taste is very eclectic. I could go from Broadway musicals to to Prince in 3 minutes, to AC/DC the next. So I'm very all over the place, and then listening to someone like Selena the next minute. So yeah, it's just it could get frustrating, because we're more than a few genres. We're in country music, and I was telling Dr. H yesterday that the artist Her, she was at the Country Music Award, and yeah, and in her BET speech, she won at the awards the other day. She said that they asked her, "How do you feel being here when it's?" I forgot exactly how she worded it, but just to paraphrase, they asked her like, "This is different than the world you come from. So how do you feel being here?" And I was like, how are they going to ask her all of this when she's so young and already accomplished in her career, and versed in so many different instruments, and just so successful? And she, in her speech, she continued to say that, Black people, Black music, Black musicians are the foundation behind country music. So there's so many genres that we have a foundation in, and people don't even realize. So I like that aspect, bringing light to rock and in the novel. So I love that.
And I just want to quickly add to Zorrie, what you said, because I don't want to talk too long, because I know that you guys have a time. We got to get to questions, but I was going to say that I'm glad you mentioned classical, because Alima does have a history in classical music, because she was a child prodigy, and she mastered the piano at 9, and her father had her performing classical music and jazz. So that's how she kind of got herself into it. but he gave her a guitar because her father is a jazz guitarist, and when he gave her a guitar at 11, she just took a hold of that and she flew with it. But also what you mentioned with her, and that it just also, and I'm gonna mention Fifi again because it just made me think about how when she said a German interviewer asked her, so what is it like to be Black? And they asked these questions. So in my book, I made it my mission to make sure one of those characters, somebody mentioned how rock has Black foundation, has Black music roots. Rock was created by Black people.
Yes.
Is in the book because I'm like, these people gonna know.
Yes.
They're gonna know about that. So yeah, it's really interesting that her said that. I'm glad that she mentioned that because it's pretty sad.
Yeah, she's someone that's current that I personally look up to. And yesterday I was just telling someone about where the first distortion came from in guitar, because I recently learned about that thanks to Women's Leadership Project, and we were going over our PowerPoints for the roundtable of Black women in rock. Dr. H said that Rosetta Tharpe was the creator of this massive distortion that went, you hear it in so many songs, specifically rock, blues, and jazz, and everything like that. So, and she doesn't get the credit. People don't know because they listen to Elvis from that time, Chuck Berry, all these male figures that stole her idea, basically. Stole it and made it more popular because, just not.
She doesn't give credit.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and then just the whole idea of distortion as a technical platform and trope and just a signature of virtuosity, that has been colonized and dominated by white males for so long that is just sort of fetishistically associated with, how you play guitar and how you can master the guitar as a point of domination. And like you said, I mean, it's something that has just totally been displaced from its origins in Black Southern, and we need to emphasize that, Southern,
right? Yep, Southern
originated music. So, Kenya, let's move on to what your next projects are. And for those of you who are just joining us, we are talking again to Kenya Nelson, who debuted with her amazing, powerful, and provocative novel, Ungrateful, that focuses on a very young Black woman protagonist navigating racism, sexism, sexual abuse, and predation, and economic exploitation, I might add. We're not going to have really time to unpack that because that's something that's writ large in the trajectories and careers of African-American musicians. But she's navigating all of these institutionalized disparities. What's your next move as a novelist, as a creator, as a lover of music?
Well, right now, I have like an arsenal of short stories based on the characters from the novel. So you guys have it from 2007 to 2011. That's when she was 19 at the beginning of the novel, and it ends when she's her early 20s. And then there's the epilogue in 2019. But during my world building, there were just so many complex stories with all the characters. And I was just like, I'm going to tell parts of a Lima story that I didn't include a book in short stories, and also like the history behind the other artists like Remy Jones and her sister Fanae, and just all the different characters, even Elliot and even the protagonist. So I'm sharing them on my website, and my website is www.knwriter.com. I don't know if I can type that in the chat because I'm on here, but I'm going to be sharing those short stories just regularly and I have so many of them that I'm editing. So for now, I'm going to be adding that. So if you haven't bought the book, or if you want to learn more about the characters, you can go there and read about it. And also, as far as music goes, it's not written in stone, but there is something that I want to do for Black women, and Black women and Black queer women, Black women all over the world, different nationalities, for rock music, to kind of bring it back, because Afropunk was a platform for Black rock musicians and everything, but I wanted to kind of say, you know what, maybe there should be something to add, something else to kind of bring back that grassroots feel that Afropunk had, and kind of, bring it back and create something new. And I'm thinking, maybe that can come into fruition soon. I can just meet the right people, the right musicians. I know a lot of very talented, amazing Black female rock musicians. So yeah, I kind of want to extend on that and create a community platform for that, because I think there needs to be more.
Definitely. That's so awesome. I totally agree. There needs to be more platforms for Black women in rock, because there's different genres of rock within itself. So helping people explore that and giving them the support to create what they need, to what they feel they want to create is awesome. So
And I don't want to be too blunt, but I just gotta be blunt. I'm gonna be honest. I'm all about diversity. That's my field. I teach English to people of different languages, but it's Black people need to be okay having a safe space without being shamed into thinking that oh well, you gotta get other people in it, and also something that won't be sold out for monetary gain or for sponsorship. And I think that we don't have that as Black alternatives. If when there was stuff like that, it's just, and I mean, if people of other races want to come join, but it has to be boundaries set. Like, this is a safe space for us. I don't want to sell this out and have it bastardized for money. And that's what I want to see again. And just to have that safe space again, because every time there's a Black safe space, it always get monetized off of and watered down and exploited.
speaking of that, there's the Me Too movement that we think is Me Too movement, how it originally started and versus where it ended up. Do you want to give any thoughts on that before we wrap?
I just make it my duty to let certain people know. Do some research online and look up who started them. Me Too and Time's Up, before you tell anybody who looks like me or you that oh, well, it happens to us. I understand that, but we as Black women have unique experiences with sexual assault. Black women and Indigenous women are overlooked more. In fact, I was told by someone that Native American girls, sexual assault and rape is, the police does, in a lot of cases, the police does nothing. So yes, we all have experiences, but just know that when it comes to the justice system taking care of it, when it comes to police getting involved, community, it's a little different for us Black women. And we should not feel like we're being excluded. But yeah, I always tell them, do some research online and look at the people that started that movement. That's all I say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we are talking about before you got on, just the difficulty of making that visible, making the activism that was initiated over a decade ago by Tarana Burke within African-American communities to try and bring to the fore the epidemic as I referenced before, that's occurring in our communities that far too often gets erased and far too often gets shunted into the nether regions as something that is not as important as, say, dealing with police violence. Not as important as dealing with brutality against cis African-American males. So that's been part of the charge of the Standing for Black Girls Coalition, is try and make visible the stories and the travails and the activism of African-American girls and women when it comes to the authentic roots of the #MeToo movement. And certainly
Right.
that's something that I think is very germane if we look at your book and all the themes that you are addressing and confronting, and the way that is very much apparent in the psyche and the trauma and the identity struggles that your protagonist is undergoing. So we definitely are appreciative of the narrative that you are putting forward in a very powerful way in the novel Ungrateful. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you this afternoon.
I enjoyed speaking to you guys. I could talk about this for so long, but I know you guys have a time limit. I really enjoyed talking about it and just being proactive. And it's great to see other Black women like me and Black girls out there. I kind of wish I had this when I was in high school, but I had my little circle. I found it. So then, I really enjoyed talking to you guys.
Great. So did you want to give a shout out to where folks can get the book?
Yeah, so right now the book is available on Amazon, and I have, well, that's the only site, but I'm going to have the book available for sale through my site soon. So I have copies printed where I can just send a book or people can just buy it directly, because I wanted it to be options, just not just Amazon. But for now, Amazon is more accessible for me, but I'm going to have it in other platforms. But right now, yeah, they can buy it from there.
Okay, and so this is the book. I don't even think we showed this during the talk. Ungrateful, really cool cover. Who did the cover, by the way? Who was the artist?
Actually, I designed the cover. I illustrated it.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's really amazing.
That's Salima.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, and then this is Rock and Roll Heretic, Life and Times of Rory Tharpe, dropped in March. So we're 2 months apart in publication.
I know, and I just finished that, and the book is your writing style, the metaphors that you make is amazing. It really is. And thank you so much for just contributing that theme and just that character to what's out there lacking. It was a great book.
Yeah, and it's interesting in reading your book. I felt that that was the opposite side of the generational spectrum, where you had your protagonist very young, very impressionable, getting a start in the industry and navigating shark-infested waters. And then my character, who obviously is for the end of her career in the sunset years, the twilight years, all these pejorative terms that are used for so-called aging African-American women. But she's at the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of being very much seat of the pants, no recognition, no accolades, scraping and clawing for any type of visibility in, again, that very, very insidious and undermining white corporate industry. So interesting bookends, literally and figuratively. So it was really great speaking with you, Kenya, and hope you have a great rest of the week. And Zorrie, thanks so much.
Thank you. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you. I'm very honored, Sikivu, for you having